Hey everybody, Dr. Bain here, Unruly Doctor Podcast, here for another update. It's been a long time. It's been 5 months, I think, last time I looked. So I recorded an episode last night. Obviously, I think I was a little tired or something like that. So I didn't like it, so I'm going to delete it. This is going to be my newest one. Clinic updates. We're working on the trailer still. It's almost done though, actually. We just did a bunch of stuff into the kitchen there. So we installed the, maybe I'll attach it here if I'm not too lazy, put a picture of the trailer now with the new kitchen cabinets in, the new countertop. Bought a really cool looking big black sink, and it's got gold hardware we're gonna be putting in, new gas stove top that we're gonna putting in, put into the mobile office, podcast studio / whatever it's gonna be. So, that's one thing. Get a little sip of some coffee here. So we got that rolling, and other things we're working on. I've got some students, that are learning how to do advanced biostructural correction right now. So they're obviously getting far more ahead than I ever was when I started getting into this stuff. So they're learning that. I've been helping them out with, learning business stuff. I went up there to San Francisco. A couple of those guys flew me out there. I taught a seminar up there about business and clinic running and, fun stuff like that. And two of them in probably like April to probably April to June-ish are going to be coming up here and they're going to intern hopefully. And if not, then in June, they'll come up as full-time doctors and they're going to take over the other rooms in the clinic. So that's kind of a big announcement just because, I'm kind of at the max capacity of the amount of people that I could possibly see. I mean, technically, no. I could see more if I worked more, but hey, man, 3.5 days a week is good enough for me. I don't feel like I need to work much more than that. So that's kind of as much as I want to work on my front. So we have that coming down the pipeline. So if you've been watching me for last several years in the clinic life and online life, then this is probably a long time coming. We used to have Sean in there, but Sean had some big life changes. Sean moved to Tennessee. So, and that's all good. So Sean's doing his whole thing down there, and he may be opening up a clinic down there for ABC, which would be really cool. Another sip of coffee. So, good luck to him on that venture. But, in terms of Arizona, we're planning on potentially adding 2 more docs on here in June and tripling our capacity of being able to see people and expanding our hours. So, my ultimate goal will be to have the clinic open 6 to 7 days a week, so that anybody at any time in terms of their life and their schedules can get treated with someone with advanced biostructural correction if they're trying to finally fix their spinal and neurological issues. So that's another big announcement. In terms of current events, man, I mean, gosh, it's been a long time since we've kind of talked about all that stuff, but really exciting stuff out recently. New study that came out on masking. Now, and if any of you have been in the clinic, you already know, not a big masker, so never been a masker. I did enjoy wearing them for a short bit because it did keep my beard, especially oiled and toasty, warm, which is why I nicknamed them beard diapers. So if I ever was hungry or if I had a piece of food stuck in them, I always could keep it warm and safe for later to munch on. But besides that, I never thought they served much more of a purpose besides keeping my beard crumbles warm. And so anyway, that got validated recently. There was a large meta-analysis study. Now, a meta-analysis is where you take a lot of different studies, you combine the data sets as long as they fit certain criteria that you set, and then you kind of see what gets spit out. And so they took 78 studies, these guys, and this is for the Cochrane Review, which is usually the gold standard of kind of the best meta-analyses out there, typically come from the Cochrane Review. And essentially they did took all the 78 studies, they combined them, which ended up being about 1 million participants. So this is the largest study on masks ever done. And I say study, but it's more of a meta-analysis. So it's more of the largest conglomerate of data analyzed ever in this subject matter. Does masking actually prevent people from getting respiratory infections, COVID, and all that stuff? And the answer is pretty much definitively not really at all. Almost no impact whatsoever statistically. So, they did the surgical masks, they found out it was less than 5% effectiveness level at preventing you from getting sick. And the N95, if properly worn, which it almost never is, but even if it is properly worn, it was about 30% risk reduction. And even then, the authors in the study were making it quite clear that they thought 30% was probably generous, and they even thought the 5% was probably generous as well. So, once again, now, if you're a patient in the clinic and you're listening to this podcast and you wear a mask, hey man, you know what? In this wonderful world of freedom, you can wear that puppy as much as you like. But the reason that I'm not going to, and the reason a lot of other people aren't going to, is that from the beginning, I knew those things never worked. That was pretty obvious to me because even from the 1918 flu epidemic, pandemic, whatever, even then they already knew that masks didn't work. They did a bunch of studies back then. Of course, you're not going to be able to get anything more than a historical summary anymore of that stuff. You won't probably be able to get your hands on those studies anymore. It's hard enough to get your hands on even the current studies. Like even this one, it's really almost impossible to find on Google. Bless me here. I got to wipe my nose. Whew. Okay. But you'll almost never even be able to find current studies on Google. So, what are you going to do? So trying to find something from 1918 is even almost more impossible since you can barely even find new stuff because Google overlords tend to block anything that doesn't go along with their push narrative. So that's huge. So that's a really big piece of current news that's related to health topics. And so, if you're a patient, you're still wearing a mask, and that makes you comfortable, that's fine. But I highly encourage you to actually read where the science has gone, because we've pretty much at this point proved without a shadow of a doubt that cloth masks do absolutely nothing. Surgical masks are as close to nothing as you'll get. And N95 is still pretty mild at best in terms of its positive outcomes. Now, and on top of that, no one is studying the negative outcomes of wearing a mask constantly. And I'm just speaking from experience based on seeing a lot of people in the clinic. The patients who masked up the most during the last couple of years tended to actually have a lot of upper respiratory infections, chronic sinus issues, chronic upper respiratory problems, a lot of lung infections. I had one guy, I think about a year ago, one guy, he got double lung pneumonia. And it turned out that he had mold in his mask because the mask had accumulated a lot of, warm breath over time. So that's just personal experience on the subject matter of all that stuff. But hey, don't listen to me. You can definitely go look up this information yourself. I just have my own opinions and I'm just in control of my own life, my own body. So, boom, that's a nice update on that front in terms of the science world. In other news and things like that, I'm really excited because Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Children's Health Defense, on the vaccine front or the VAC front, is coming out with a new novel, a new book, a couple of them. I just bought one of the new ones for the clinic, and I can't remember the name of it in particular, but it's on vaccines. So I bought that one. It's going to be available at the clinic for my little clinic library. So if any of you are my patients out there, y'all have already seen how many books I have in the front office on pretty much everything from metaphysics to, vaccines to general health stuff to cancers. I got books on everything. And I continue to accumulate more books, even if I don't read them, just because I believe in the freedom of knowledge. And a lot of people are like, well, what, Dr. Bain, why don't you buy the digital copy? Well, I don't really trust the digital copy because I'm pretty sure at some point they're just going to delete your ability to download these digital things. And if you've already downloaded them, they'll just remove your access to them. And they've already proven themselves that they have that capability to just remove stuff off your phone or off of your tablets and stuff as long as it's connected to the internet. So yeah, I keep buying physical copies. So that's just me. But Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is also releasing another book after this recent vaccine book. It should be coming out in the next couple months. And the book is going to be called Vaxxed versus Unvaxxed, basically comparing the studies that showed over time. Now we have a lot of studies, tons and tons of data that show that unvaccinated people are definitively much healthier than vaccinated people. Now this is previous to the newest addition to that schedule. We're talking about just the established schedule that's been around and being added to over the last several decades. And even I wrote my own book on the subject matter a while back when I was in the doctorate program for chiropractic. I was actually writing my own book on advanced biostructural correction, on chemical stuff and chemical issues, spiritual issues. And I had actually written a whole book on that and how did I cure my multiple sclerosis naturally and how did I come out of all that on my own. So I had written a book, it's very similar, where I had gone back into the CDC vaccination schedule and I had tracked, how many had they added, when did they add them, why did they add them, what was the effects of that. We got more data than we could count on this subject matter. It's just the problem is you're never going to see or hear about it. And a lot of that is political, and you can come to your own conclusions on that. But just being somebody who did a lot of research at the time on vaccination, because back in the day, right, a lot of people don't know my history, but, back in the day, I was very, very sick. I had multiple sclerosis and I was almost in a wheelchair and it was getting pretty bad. And I went through the medical ringer and I went, long story short, went through the whole medical thing and the system and quickly determined that healthcare had nothing to do with healing people, had nothing to do with trying to find the root cause to disease, had nothing to do with actually figuring my body out. And, it was all about money and profits. And, I don't know how much money I ended up having spent just in the hospital bills in 6 months, but it was several $100,000 in bills, if I remember properly. So, I digress. Maybe I'm a little biased, but, at that time when I started my investigation into vaccines and stuff, I was very open. I thought, well, there's probably some validity to a lot of what they're saying, right? It makes sense in theory, injecting something into the body as a particulate of the original, viral strain or whatever it is you're trying to get the body used to, right? You're putting these other substances in there to activate the immune system, like aluminum or other things like that. And, you can dig into the science of how the immune system works and all the things that I did at the time that I don't bother memorizing anymore. Because when you actually learn how to start helping and fixing bodies, right, helping people get healthier, you'll learn none of that really matters, sadly enough. Well, maybe not sadly, maybe hopefully. The actual wonderful thing, I guess, about fixing bodies and healing people is you actually don't need to know all the intricacies of how it works. I actually find the more bogged down you are with the intricacies, the less of a healer you typically become. You actually can be a way better healer if you just understand certain things and then leave the mysteries of the body to itself. But, once again, I'm a little biased, but I'm also living proof that you can come out of a lot of things. But in my research on vaccines back then and even into today, it's great on paper. It looks good in theory, but in practice and in how we can actually look at outcomes, health outcomes. So that's what this book is that Robert F. Kennedy is releasing is what are the actual statistical outcomes of people who are vaxxed versus unvaxxed, which is a study that has never been very widely published because they don't want to publish that because the results are very striking. In terms of just if you listen to some of his interviews that he has online showing how the unvaxxed population has exceedingly low levels of asthma, exceedingly low levels of food allergies and food sensitivities, all-cause mortalities and other things like that. There's a lot of things that the unvaccinated are highly superior to in terms of actual statistics, not just theories. So, much higher rates of eczemas and other kinds of dermatitises and stuff in vaccinated populations, things like that. Things that if you really just take a step back and you observe, it's really not that hard to see. This new population of kids that I take care of in the clinic right from time to time here, where you can see how ill they are in every category. I think this new generation is the epitome of the issues of over medication. Now, a lot of people might listen to me on stuff like that and they go way too far, right? These days, everybody's so sensitive to being able to have an opinion on those subject matters. But there's a great awakening that's occurring where a much larger conversation is starting to happen where I think we took it too far, right? A lot of people are starting to come to that conclusion in terms of medical interventions. I think we've gone too far with medical interventions. And it's not a very hard thing. It's not a hard conclusion to come to, especially, with the last 2 years showing how we've really got a very screwed up healthcare system. Now, if you've ever listened to a single episode of the podcast, you know that I've got a very vast array of opinions on healthcare and all of that good stuff, where I don't think it was a mistake that it's become such a mess. I think it's an exact planned mistake, okay? Because they make a fair amount of cash with the system the way it's designed. It's much more profitable to have sick people than it is to have well people. And you can go back a long time ago before hospitals got so large, and you can show how much less profit that these places made. Excuse me for another sip of coffee. Maybe that's the secret to recording a great podcast. Maybe I just need coffee. I need to have a coffee every time. I need to record it in the morning when I'm snappy and I'm ready to go. Last night I tried to record it late. It happens, whatever. I got to start recording these bad boys early morning. But I'm hoping when we bring the other guys in, then we'll be able to have more interesting conversations, because then we can have podcasts with 3 guys talking instead of just me staring into a camera and you got to look at this mug the whole time. And so anyway, but I'm really excited for that book to come out that he's got coming out, because I really enjoyed Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s book on Fauci. I really enjoyed his book on lockdowns and the pandemic. So if you haven't bought those books, I highly encourage you to buy those books. They're easy reads. They're not that long. They're chocked full of statistical information, which I really appreciate, studies and things like that. Not just opinion, but opinion along with factual information and statistics and studies that can back up the claims themselves, which you don't see very often anymore. Most things these days are just opinion pieces. And because, I'm a clinic owner and I'm a healer and I got a life, I'm a human being, I wish I could be splurging all my studies and things on here all the time perfectly, but I don't. If I give you enough information to look it up yourself, and I just trust that you guys can verify and make your own opinions. The whole point of this podcast has always been as more of a diary for me and for my hardcore patients, a way to connect more with the clinic and what are we doing and where are we going. So that's the way it's always been. So this is just a way to direct means talk to you guys. So go out, buy that book, pre-order it. I already have. It's on its way. So that's going to be a great addition to the clinic. I'm really excited. So if you don't want to buy it, you can always borrow it from the clinic. But if you take it and you don't bring it back fast enough, I will chase you. I will hunt you down personally. Okay. So I've had some patients borrow books. I have to hunt them down to get them back. And these are precious to me because, once again, I fully believe that at some point the government will censor all the types of books that I buy. So to me, each and every one of those is like a piece of gold. So if you steal that, I will come for you. It's going to be like Liam Neeson and any one of those taken hostage book or hostage movies or whatever they call them, whatever the Liam Neeson stuff is. So anyway, that's on that note. So, in terms of, let me think, is there any interesting patients I've treated recently? That would be kind of an interesting one. I will say that since I've really integrated the energy work into the clinic, I've seen some really intriguing root causes to a lot of things. That's one thing I really have enjoyed, is I've really enjoyed seeing and helping people heal from the deeper root causes to how disease actually builds. That's been a fascinating experience. For example, you might have on the outside some type of issue, and you could name it. I don't like naming things because that's medical. They love naming all that stuff, doing all that. I don't, but it's a thyroid thing or a liver thing or a skin issue or an emotional issue, right? A lot of these things where people aren't really sure where to go, where to turn, what to do. They go to the medical system. The medical system does their little thing that they do. Can't quite find a great answer. They just see some blood work that's up or down, and in terms of the numbers, put you on a drug and then pray over it, right? And that's not a great solution. But when I've integrated the energy work that I do into the clinic, I've seen some really interesting reasons why people get what they get. One thing I've noticed that has a real hard tendency to create issues in the body are negative statements that get stuck in the body from traumas. And one of the particular negative statements I find a lot of is in terms of the body code system, which is the energy work techniques that I do. Um, there's a category called, well, there's a couple of them. There's idea allergies and there's broadcast messages. A broadcast message is kind of like I tell patients, it's like a kick me sign. It's an subconscious message that you're putting out to the world, and then other people's subconsciouses are picking up on that message, and then they're giving you what you want. So what's an example of like a broadcast message? Well, a broadcast message might be something like here. Let me pull up on my phone. I'll even pull up the body code app. I'll pull one up here that I find pretty common. So let's go into here. Okay, let's go pull up my chart here. So let's find a pretty common one. Okay. Yeah. So like I've had a couple people where they had a broadcast message of make me suffer, for example. And so then you tell a patient that and they're like, what? Make me suffer? I don't want to suffer, right? Not here, you don't. But in here, in the subconscious, you are putting out that message. And so then the subconsciouses of other people around you are picking up on that message, right? That kick me sign. And then they're doing exactly what you want. They're going to make you suffer. Friends, family, coworkers, spouses, your kids, your whatever, life in general, right? Because, if you listen to any of my previous podcasts episodes, you create your own reality. You get what you want, right? So if your life sucks, that's because deep down somewhere in that subconscious, you're asking for that experience. Oh, and here comes the sneeze. Hold on. Whew. Bless me. So you're getting the experience that you're looking for, right? So that's a really interesting thing because I found things like that, broadcast messages and they're usually created through trauma. You know what I mean? So like for that one, right? Make me suffer. A lot of people say, well, gosh, I don't want that. Why would that be there? Well, I don't know. Maybe when you were a kid or a younger adult or something, or maybe at some point in your life as an adult, maybe you did something that you felt guilty about or you felt bad about. Maybe you hurt somebody's feelings or maybe you didn't do the right choice, right? And so then you felt bad and you wanted punishment for whatever you did. So then your subconscious creates the broadcast message to make you suffer in order for you to feel like you're getting what you deserve, right? I felt bad because I did this thing. And now the universe is going to punish me for it inevitably. Because at my subconscious level, I want to punish myself for having done something bad, right? So that's just one example, you know what I mean? Or I had a patient couple weeks ago, that was 3 weeks ago, I was working on her with some energy work and she had an idea allergy. So idea allergies are basically like, it's almost like a physical allergy just to the thought of something or the idea of something. And hers was about wealth and money and success. So she had this idea allergy to wealth and success and money. And she was like, what? All I want to do is be wealthy. All I want to do is be successful. Well, maybe. But then when I started digging into her subconscious and asking it questions, it turned out that her dad was very wealthy and successful. And because of his wealth and success, he wasn't really home very often. And so then they had a really weak relationship. Her mom suffered, she suffered, the other, her brothers, sisters, or whatever all suffered from their father not being there. So then she associated wealth and success with being a person who's absent, who's not going to be at home, who's not going to treat their family well, who's not going to treat their friends well. And thus she's like, on a subconscious level, I don't want money and wealth because I associate that with this wealthy, successful person in my family who wasn't around and didn't treat his family well. So thus, wealth is bad, right? Boom, that's how the subconscious is working, puts those two together. So thus, she creates an idea allergy or a physical reaction just to the idea of wealth to keep it away from her because it reminds her of her father, right? Boom, there you go. So those are different things that I find really fascinating as I continue to help people dig into the subconscious and try to help them energetically heal a lot of this old junk, just because I find that stuff fascinating. So I just wanted to create a little quick podcast episode. I think a lot of these ones are by myself. I'm going to make them real short, real sweet, real easy until we get some of the other guys in here so we can have really long format ones like we did in the beginning there. And my camera only has a 29-minute limit. So I'm almost hitting that 29-minute limit soon here. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of the Unruly Doctor podcast. Like, subscribe, make sure you give us a 5-star rating. That really helps our podcast grow bigger. Not that the whole goal is to make a huge podcast. I don't do this because I fully expect it to go big, but if it does, that'd be beneficial. So anyways, guys, I hope that was a good update for you. I'm hoping to record more because now I brought the studio home with me, so I should be able to love everybody. And if you're not a patient, I hope you come soon.